The situation is far worse than we imagined in the early morning of the 28th of February 2026. The United States and Israel launched a joint surprise attack on Iran with fierce gunfire and artillery. Can you believe it? Iran's so-called impenetrable air defense system was completely paralyzed and couldn't intercept a single missile. Even more shocking, the latest news confirms that Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei was killed in the attack. Iran is completely enraged, has closed the Strait of Hormuz, and the global energy market is in turmoil. How were the US and Israel able to launch the attack without being detected? Why was Dubai airport bombed? How dangerous is the current international? First, let's quickly sort out the key highlights. The US-Israel Joint Force adopted an unconventional combat mode, a devastating special tactic called time on target, toot. Many of you may not be familiar with this tactic, so to put it simply, no matter whether the weapons are launched from submarines, destroyers, or stealth bombers, even if they have different starting point and launch times, they will all hit the intended target, apparent. The power of this synchronized strike is equivalent to concentrating all firepower on one point and exploding in an instant, leaving Iran with no time to react or intercept. To achieve this combat goal, the US and Israel spared no expense. 2 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers were directly deployed at Iran's doorstep. Each warship was loaded with cruise missiles, and each combat aircraft was equipped with high-precision guided bombs. They spent weeks repeatedly calculating flight routes, calibrating strike times, and even taking into account subtle factors such as wind changes and terrain undulations, aiming to be foolproof and completely crush Iran's resistance with one strike. The targets of this military strike are also clearly divided into 2 main parts. Israel's core task is to eliminate Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei and Iran's senior leadership. The United States is responsible for attacking Iran's various military targets and high-value industrial facilities, drone factories, and aerial pubs. To put it bluntly, their core goal is to complete a decapitation operation on Iran's leadership in one go, while completely destroying Iran's war production capacity, so that Iran can no longer organize effective counterattacks, and according to the latest news today, was killed in the attack on the morning of the 28th of February. Iran has announced a 40-day national mourning period starting from the 1st of March local time, which means Iran's counterattacks will be more frantic and reckless. At this point, many of you must be wondering, Iran's air defense capability is not weak. They not only have independently developed S-400 air defense missiles, provided by Russia. Logically, they should be able to intercept most incoming weapons and equipment. Why did it completely fail this time? Failing to intercept a single missile, the United States adopted a dimension-reducing suppression combat strategy instead of confronting Iran's air defense system head-on. They first used electronic warfare and cyber warfare to completely paralyze Iran's radar monitors. Imagine this. Iran's radar screens were filled with false signal data. Operators couldn't distinguish between real missiles and false targets at all, and the command center couldn't receive any accurate battlefield. What's more insidious is that the United States also set a series of traps. They first launched hundreds of ABM-160 MAL micro-air launch decoys, which are identical in appearance to F-15 and F-16 fighter jets, and must show exactly the same signals on radar forces to Iran's rating to find out in the end that all they intercepted. At the moment when Iran's air defense system was successfully distracted and plunged into chaos, the US and Israel's 5th generation stealth fighters F-35 and F-22 sneaked through Iran's airspace and launched a fatal attack on Iran's core targets, and Khamenei's residence was one of the most critical targets. Let's turn our attention back to the specific process of this military strike, which is more thrilling than a Hollywood blockbuster in the early morning of the 28th of February 2026. The entire military operation of few waves of attacks on Iran, and each wave of strikes hit the target accurately, leaving Iran no time to breathe or adjust. The first wave of attacks focused on Iran's air defense systems and command centers in the Persian Gulf and the northern part of the Arabian Sea. After receiving the launch order, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, such as the U.S. Thomas Hudner, activated their vertical launch systems, and dozens of Tomahawk land attack missiles roared into the sky. These missiles flew at subsonic speed, shuttling low close to the ground, perfectly avoiding Iran's radar detection range. They were preset to a loiter and wait, synchronized strike mode. At the same time, more than a dozen Israeli combat aircraft took off from the mainland, flew through the airspace of Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and other countries, and raced straight to central Iran. This flight distance is not short. TC. One-way distance reaches 930 to 1240 miles, and it also needs to avoid the air defense systems of the countries along the way, making the mission extremely difficult. But Israeli pilots have undergone repeated actual combat drills, and with the full cover of U.S. electronic warfare units, they successfully reached the target area and acted synchronously with the cruise missiles launched by the United States, hitting Iran's air defense headquarters in the same second. Here is a detail I must emphasize was carefully planned. They even communicated in advance with some Middle Eastern countries to obtain temporary aid could smoothly enter in Thal. After the first wave of attacks, Iran's air defense network was completely disrupted and lost its defensive capability. Next was the second wave of attacks focused on destroying Iran's ballistic missiles. These bombers took off from military bases in Jordan and the UAE, penetrated deep into Iranian territory, and launched precise targeted strikes on Iran's nuclear bunkers. Ballistic may not know how powerful the Megative-2 stealth bomber is. It can carry a large number of high-precision guided bombs, which can penetrate dozens of meters of concrete walls and directly destroy underground. Moreover, its stealth performance is extremely excellent. Iran's radar system cannot detect its trace at all. By the time Iran finds something abnormal, the bombs have already hit the target, liberating with the B-negative. Two bombers is also the US F-15E Strike Eagle fighter squadron. Each can carry 19 guided bombs or 28 small-diameter weapons, mainly responsible for attacking Iran's mobile targets, such as ballistic missile launch vehicles and missile convoys. Their ADS radar can scan the ground accurately. Even if a missile launch vehicle is hidden in a mountain valley, it can be accurately located, and then bombs can be dropped to complete the. When these combat aircraft run out of ammunition or fuel, they do not return to the base directly. Instead, they fly to a preset aerial refueling route, dock with aerial tankers, refuel thousands of pounds of jet fuel in the air, and then immediately return to the battlefield to perform the second strike mission. This seamless strike mode left Iran with no time to organize effective counterattacks, only able to passively withstand continuous strikes. The third wave of attacks mainly targeted Iran's military manishtas. USEF joined forces aircraft and missiles focused on attacking Iran's aerospace hubs, drone factories, various military matching plants, etc., aiming to completely destroy Iran's war potential and make Iran no longer able to produce weapons and equipment. Among them, Iran's Isfahan region was listed as a key target. Among the region's defense is extremely program and drone program, although the region's defense is extremely tight under the fierce attack of the US-EO joint force. It was completely destroyed. The night sky was illuminated by the fire of explosions, and the scene was extremely tragic. In addition to Isfahan, many other Iranian cities such as Khamenei, Qom, and Kermanshah were also severely attacked. Khamenei's industrial and aerospace hubs were completely flattened. Qom, as Iran's ideological core area, also suffered a devastating blow. It can be said that after these three consecutive waves of strikes, Iran's military strength has suffered a fatal blow. But even so, Iran's counterattack still came quickly and fiercely, and the UAE has become one of the primary targets of Iran's counterattack, which is the key news we received today. According to the latest international news updated at 10 a.m. Beijing time on the 2nd of March, after Khamenei was killed in the attack, Iran was completely enraged and launched Operation Honest Promise 4. It not only attacked U.S. bases in Israel, but also extended its anger to the U.S. allies in the Middle East. Among them, Dubai Airport was directly bombed, becoming the focus of this counterattack. Let me tell you the specific details of the bombing of Dubai Airport and the UAE. According to the UAE Ministry of Defense statement and reports from multiple foreign media, Iran launched 137 missiles and 209 drones towards the UAE at this time. Although most of them were destroyed or intercepted by the UAE and US air defense systems, some missiles still broke through the interception and hit key targets, including Dubai International Airport and Abu Dhabi International. Prosecutors quoted a source from the UAE intervention sector as saying that one terminal of Dubai intervention sector. However, it is not yet certain whether the two airports were directly hit by missiles or splashed by debris from intercepted missiles, but it is certain that both airports suffered facility damage and flight operations were suspended. Abdi Media Office confirmed in a post on social media that debris from an interceptor missile fell into the local Jebel Ali port, causing a fire at one of the ports. Emergency personnel rushed to the scene to put out the fire. At that time, several U.S. warships were docked at the port. Fortunately, no U.S. military personnel were injured, but the port facilities were damaged to a certain extent. In addition, the UAE's Al Dhafra airbase was also hit by Iranian missiles. A missile fell directly inside the base, and shrapnel caused at least one death and multiple injuries. This is the first time the UAE has suffered casualties in this conflict. As of 10 a.m. today, DB Unreader have been completely closed. In addition, affected by the conflict, many Middle Eastern countries, including Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE civilian airliners, have made emergency evasions. According to FlectRadar24, there are currently no civilian aircraft flying over the Middle East, which is in sharp contrast to the busy scene before the attack. Air transportation in the entire Middle East has closure of Dubai Airport. Iran has taken another ruthless action. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps official has taken a Dabardi impasse through the Strait of Hormuz. Many of you may not know the importance of the Strait of Hormuz. Let me popularize it for you. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. It is the only way for crude oil exports from Middle Eastern oil-producing countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Qatar, and the UAE. The oil transported through the strait accounts for about 1/5 of the world's total oil transportation volume. Now that the strait is closed, many oil tanker owners and traders have suspended the transportation of crude oil, fuel, and liquefied natural gas through the strait. The shipping industry has encountered an acute operation crisis, and the global energy supply pattern has been completely disrupted. At this point, I must carefully analyze the current international situation for everyone combined with today's latest developments. The entire situation has entered a full-scale escalation state, mainly divided into 3 core levels. Each level is related to the global pattern, so you must listen carefully. The first level, the direct confrontation between the USSR and Iran, has entered a white-hot stage. Now that Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei has been confirmed killed in the attack, Iran has entered a national mourning period, and its hatred for the US and Israel has reached its peak. It will definitely launch more fierce counterattacks in the future. Moreover, Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles and drones. Although some have been destroyed, the remaining weapons still have strong lethality. The two sides have fallen into a life-or-death stalemate, and there is no possibility of reconciliation in the short term. The second level, many Middle Eastern countries have been drawn into the war, and the situation is completely out of control. In addition to the UAE being bombed, other U.S. allies in the Middle East, such as Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait, have also been affected to varying degrees. The headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain has become a key target of Iranian missiles. Some missiles broke through the interception, causing casualties and facility damage. Qatar's air defense system Ares. More notably, Saudi Arabia's stock market plummeted nearly 5% at the opening on the 1st of March. And the stock exchanges of Iran and Kuwait even suspended trading directly. The Middle East financial market. The conflict has spread globally, and the energy and financial markets are in chaos. After the Strait of Hormuz was closed, global crude oil transportation was somber. Some analysts predict that oil prices may rise to $75 to $80 per barrel. In addition, the gold price has experienced a pulse-like rise. The US dollar has been boosted in the short term. The upward trend of the RMB against the US dollar has slowed down. The 10-year US Treasury bond yield has intensified. At the same time, the Middle East conflict has also disturbed sulfur supply. It is currently a critical period for spring plowing and fertilizer preparation. Phosphate fertilizer bores and fade. Many of you may ask, why did the US and Israel suddenly launch a preemptive military strike on Iran? In fact, the reasons behind this are very complex. Simply put, the US and Israel have always regarded Iran as a thorn in their side in the Middle East and have always wanted to suppress it. As a military power in the Middle East, Iran has been committed to developing nuclear programs and missile technology, which has posed a huge security threat to the United States. The United States hopes to consolidate its hegemony in the Middle East by suppressing Iran, control the oil resources in the Middle East, and thus influence the global energy pattern. Therefore, the US and Israel have long reached a consensus and plan to launch a military strike on Iran. But they have been waiting for the right time, and the timing of this military strike was also carefully chosen by the US and Israel. At that time, Iran's senior leadership was undergoing internal adjustments. Moreover, before the start of the strike operation, the US and Israel made full preparations in advance. They not only deployed a large number of military forces, but also conducted combat-e. Although this tactic sounds simple, it is extremely difficult to implement in practice. It needs to accurately calculate the flight speed, flight route, and strike time of each weapon, and also fully consider various uncertain factors, such as wind, direction, terrain, and weather. A slight error may lead to the failure of the entire strike plan, and even expose its combat intentions. To achieve this synchronized strike effect, the military planners of the US and Israel make great efforts. They use advanced computer systems to accurately calculate and coordinate the trajectory of each missile. In addition to the special time-on-target tactic, the US and all Joint Force also use many advanced weapons and equipment. There is also the US Tomahawk cruise missile. This missile has a long range and high precision, which can accurately attack ground targets. It can also fly low, close to the ground, effectively avoiding the enemy's radar. Their F-15 and F-16 fighters have undergone multiple upgrades and transformations, with very advanced perform of weapons and equipment, and have extremely strong mobility, which can perform various strike missions in complex battlefield and BAFTA, which can provide aerial refueling and intensively comport, and the combat effectiveness can be maximized. Looking at the latest situation today, the entire Middle East has entered a state of high tension. The conflict between the US-Israel Joint Force and Iran may escalate further at any time, and it is all if it continues to expand. It will have an irreversible impact on the global oil market and golding pattern, and may even trigger a third world war, bringing huge disasters to the world. Therefore, many countries in the world are calling on the US, Israel, and Iran to exercise restraint, resolve their differences through peaceful negotiations. However, judging from the current situation, the possibility of peaceful negotiations is not large. Iran has clearly stated that it will launch the most violent counterattack against the US. The US and Israel have stated that they will continue to launch military strikes against Iran until Iran completely abandons its nuclear program and missile technology and no longer poses a threat to them. Notably, Iran's move to close the Strait of Hormuz has touched the bottom line of global energy conflict, and the situation where countries may be drawn into this conflict. In the next step, what we can predict is that Iran will continue to launch missiles and drones to attack US and Israeli military. Bahrain and other countries will still face the risk of further attacks. The US-IL Joint Force will continue to increase the intensity of strikes to further destroy Iran's military strength and industrial facilities and weaken Iran's war potential. At the same time, the closed state of the Strait of Hormuz will continue. The global energy supply shortage will be difficult to ease. Oil prices and gold prices will continue to fluctuate. The Middle East's financial market will continue to be turbulent. The conflict between the two sides will continue to long-term war, and the lives of the people will be severely affected. Many of you may ask, where will this conflict ultimately go? In fact, no one can give a definite answer, but what is certain is that this conflict will bring huge disasters to the people of the Middle East. Moreover, this conflict will also affect the global economic and political situation, trigger a series of chain reactions, and pose a serious threat to global peace and stability. Even Paul Chan-mo-fa, Financial Secretary of the Hong Kong Special Ed Market Regions brought by the Middle East War, which shows that the impact of this conflict has spread to every corner of the world. Here, I also want to say to everyone, war is never the best way to solve problems, and peace is the common pursuit and desire of mankind. It is hoped that the US, Israel, and Iran can exercise restraint, put aside their hatred and differences, resolve their conflicts through peaceful, stable, and happy life away from the pain of war. Finally, what do you think about the US-IL Joint Forces surprise attack on Iran and the bombing of Dubai Airport? What kind of counterattacks do you think Iran will launch next? How much impact will the closure of the Strait of Hormuz have on the global energy market? Where will this conflict openly go? Welcome everyone to leave your comments. For those of you who like this content, remember to like, follow, and share. I will continue to update you on the latest developments of this conflict. See you in the next video.